remember having a very difficult time sleeping at night, and I was very scared of the dark, always terrified because I felt like I was being watched. And I remember laying in bed at night and feeling this man in the room with me, which sounds very scary, and for a young child it is, but I don't want anyone listening to feel scared that, like, oh, there's just this man in the room watching me when I'm little, because there are ways to protect yourself and connect safely, and which we'll get to.
So, welcome, Gina. Thank you for joining Spiritual Connections by Joelle podcast.
Hello.
Okay, so to give a little background for the listeners, Gina is my beautiful cousin, but she's not only my beautiful cousin, she is as well as a medium just like me. Her abilities go beyond what I think I can do sometimes, and we both have these beautiful different gifts of where we concentrate and focus on. And I think that's the whole reason why I wanted to bring her on today is to show you guys of how different it can be, right? Like as a medium, like we have differences in how we work and where our strengths and differences are. So that's exactly why I wanted to have you on. So, Gina, why don't you start from the beginning? Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and maybe start from the beginning. Like when you were a child, I know, like I personally know about your childhood and things that you've seen and experienced. But I think as our listeners would know, they would love to hear something maybe that they've experienced as well. So,
Sure. But yeah, as you were saying before, I think it's funny because we've kind of developed this stuff around the same time and together, but we've had a lot of differences in how we connect, in um, our strengths, and just the way that things have developed have been so different, but we've done it alongside each other, which has been very fun. But yeah, when I was younger, my mom will say I was a very sensitive baby. Um, I couldn't be in rooms with a lot of people. If they went out to a friend's house, they were stuck upstairs with me, crying the whole time. I didn't like loud noises. I'm still that way. If
hmm.
there's music playing in the house for too long or too loud, I'm always like, Frank, my husband, turn it down. It's too loud. And he's like, it's not loud at all. It's like very sensitive growing up. And the house that we grew up in, I'd say when I was in, I don't know, elementary school, I was probably in like fifth grade or so, sixth grade maybe. I remember having a very difficult time sleeping at night, and I was very scared of the dark, always terrified because I felt like I was being watched. And I remember laying in bed at night and feeling this man in the room with me, which sounds very scary, and for a young child it is, but I don't want anyone listening to feel scared that, like, oh, there's just this man in the room watching me when I'm little, because there are ways to protect yourself and connect safely, and which we'll get to. I remember, and I could see him not in the way that you see someone, like the way that I see you or the way that I would see someone who came into the house right now, but I he was just a tall, skinny man with a top hat and dark clothing, and he didn't move. He just kind of observed me, and it was terrifying as a 10, 11, 12-year old. And I think I finally told my mom about it. And I didn't know it at the time, but after many sleepless nights, she had gone to see a psychic medium who was in the town that we lived in. And she came to me one day and had said, I saw this person. She says that she can connect, and she says that what you're seeing is true, which was very validating. And I owe a lot to my mom for taking that route. Because I think if she at the time had asked me if I was okay with her seeing someone and talking about what I was experiencing, I don't know that it's just an unknown world,
Yeah.
that connection to spirit. I didn't know anything about it. And when you're a child, I think you're very connected. I think all
Hmm.
children are very in tune and can see a lot and are very sensitive. And so for my mom to do that was, I'm very thankful that she did. And so this woman I went to see then, and I think before I went to see her, maybe she came to the house. I don't remember which one came first, but she was trying to help rid the house of um, this man who was there kind of keeping me up at night and keeping me scared. And so I remember she came to the house and she came with her sage and she went through the whole house and did her cleansing of the space. And I remember she got down to the basement and was like, oh, he's hiding from me. Like he was,
I don't remember
my
this
mom's
part
a
of the story.
personal my mom's a personal trainer, and so the basement was like a home gym for her to see clients. And so I remember he was in the corner and I felt it at the time that where he was, and it was so validating for her to come into the house
Mm.
and see everything that I was seeing and feeling because there's a point where you're like, am I crazy?
Of course.
And
100%.
so he she did the cleansing, and this woman had taught myself and my mom and my brother, who is also very sensitive, how to set boundaries with spirit. And so from that point on, I didn't really feel him as much. I think it was a lingering fear
Hmm.
of that being present for so long. It was definitely many years before I said anything. And so I remember being up at night and my mom coming into my room and helping me. And this woman Yvonne had taught us to, like, you can tell spirit to leave.
Hmm.
You stand firm with how you say it, and you have intention with what your needs and what your wants are, and
Hmm.
they will respect it.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in bed and my mom telling me, you need to tell him to leave.
Yeah.
And, you know, going about it that way. And it worked. And
Perfect.
it was very, um, it's kind of like a blur, though, And
Hmm.
I was one of my very best friends at the time. Her father had passed away when she was younger, spent a lot of time over her house. And I remember during that time, I was talking to her about all of this stuff that was going on. I had two very good friends, and I was very emotional about all of it, and they were very supportive. I mean, we were 12 years old. And so I remember being at her house and her being like, like, can you talk to my dad? I was like, I
Oh.
feel him, like he's around. And that was another thing that I remember thinking, oh, this is can be like kind of a cool thing too, right? Like, and wanting to play around with it, but not knowing how to. And
Hmm.
then, you're a teenager and then you're in high school, and that's like the last thing you want people knowing that you do when you're 16 years old.
Did you have still experiences as you were growing up and like because I know as you are adolescents and young 20s, your mindset is not of okay, let me delve more into this. It's more like let me shut this off kind of thing, right? Was that how
Yeah.
you experienced it? Was that how you kept it going?
I was very shut off to my intuition, which is that bridge, that connection to spirit and to, other realms, whatever you want to call it. Um, that was definitely blocked out a lot. I had, um, you're a teenager, you go to college, you're trying to make new friends, you're trying to figure out who you are as a person going into your 20s. And that's I think a part of me always knew that that was something that I could do, but it was never, there were a lot of questions around it. I never really got a lot of answers aside from some validation from Yvonne and some skills as to how to. set boundaries to make myself feel a little bit more safe
Hmm.
with it. And I definitely utilized it at times when I felt scared. But I was very closed off for a long time, just dealing with mental health issues and, all sorts of things. And then it wasn't until my mid 20s, maybe 3 years ago, I was teaching yoga. A lot of things that led to getting to the point in my life where I could connect again and have a stronger connection between kind of hitting rock bottom a few times and deciding to make healthier changes in my life through food, my relationship with different substances, my relationship with different people, and things in my environment. You just change a lot about your life to be able to strengthen that connection. And so it was through actually getting my Reiki certification, right? I was teaching yoga at a yoga studio, back to that.
Hmm.
And um, they were offering a Reiki certification that I was very interested in doing because at this point I had been kind of loving the energy work, and the somatics was a huge part of healing for me personally. The talk therapy was one thing that I never really felt fully comfortable with. And then when I started diving into body work and learning about how the energy body affects so many things in your life was when I really started to feel like my healing took off. And so I was getting my attunement to Reiki, and I was partnered up with a man in my class who was also getting the certification. And I was practicing on him, and like, his parents are here. It's just, for me, it's very much a knowing.
Hmm.
You have the different clairs,
Yeah.
the feeling. Um, it's very much a knowing and a feeling that this man's parents were here. And I was questioning myself so much because it had been years since
Yeah.
anything like this had happened. And I had felt so disconnected from myself for so long that I was like, there's no way that this is happening right now. And I'm not going to say anything because you never really know how someone's going to receive something like that.
Oh, completely. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
our everyday, which we can talk more about too. But go
yeah,
ahead.
very different responses
Yeah.
from people. And I've also never just approached someone before with something like that. And so I wasn't really sure what to do with it. And we had continued to be partnered up and we're practicing. And I just could not get this feeling out of me that his parents were here. And he was a very wonderful man. And I felt comfortable talking to him about it. And so we were kind of aside and I asked him, I was like, is there any chance, like, are your parents passed? Because I think I feel them when I'm doing, and he was so excited, loved it,
Oh.
was so happy to have his parents there. And he started crying and he gave me a hug and was like, I needed to hear from them. And then
Oh.
I'm crying and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful when it's
Hmm.
received that
Hmm.
way, when I can be that vessel for someone else who is grieving and needed to hear from someone, and I'm the person that they chose to allow that message to come through. And so that was the first moment that I really thought, okay, maybe we're onto something here. Maybe this is like a real thing, because at the same time I was doing some holistic health coaching, and there were people that some clients that I was seeing, and people were coming through in those sessions, and I would say something about it. I took that and was like, that feeling is familiar. Like I know that feeling when someone pops through
Yeah.
now.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I'll get more validation. Like maybe there are more people that are trying to use me to talk to someone.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that was.
the start of it
happening.
all.
Yeah, it kind of happened quickly from there. And then I opened up um, what I called intuitive healing sessions because I wasn't really sure. I was like, is it Reiki? Is it, am I just reading energy? Like, I wasn't really sure that it was definitely a mediumship thing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I opened up these sessions, and some friends on social media shared about it. And I had like 13 or 14 sessions total. Every single one was a mediumship session. There was no
Wow.
Reiki involved. There was no, it was like immediately people started coming through,
Mm-hmm.
and it happened very quickly. And so that was a huge learning curve because it's one thing to connect, because then it went from the feeling and the knowing to, oh, I'm hearing things and I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing things too. Like they're walking me through their childhood home or they're
Mm-hmm.
showing me things. And that was around the same time that, or maybe a little bit earlier, we had started practicing with Rach, and
Mm-hmm.
we were getting together weekly and going through different practices with items and reading for people that, like, bringing other people in and um, calling people forward that, I didn't know from you and you didn't know from me to read. And
Just
that was,
I'm just going to give our listeners some background on that. So, what Gina's talking about is that once we were tapping into our gifts both around the same time, that we started these medium circles with family and people who were not, Gina and I were uh, m like pretty much knowing that we were mediums, but then we wanted to pull other people in who just wanted to kind of experiment and who are intuitive, and family and friends just to kind of play around and strengthen our skills. I think that's the whole purpose of that. So that's what she was talking about. But go ahead.
yeah, that was all happening around the
Mm-hmm.
same time. And so, these mediumship sessions that are kind of really taking off, skills are developing very quickly. And I was starting to feel a little overwhelmed with it because, it's one thing to connect, and it's another thing to hold space, and another thing to facilitate a conversation and a safe environment for someone who is still grieving.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the most difficult thing for me was, learning these skills, trusting it without getting in my head about it. And how is this
Completely.
going to be received? Because you're not only sensitive to past loved ones coming through, but you're very sensitive to the person who's sitting in front of you.
Of course.
And you can feel
Yeah.
the doubts that they
Mm-hmm.
have about you and what you're doing. And there's almost a sense of, the ego comes in and I need to prove myself.
Mm.
I want to be right. I want to show them that this is real. And that's not how you connect. And I was getting very stuck in that battle of not wanting to seem like I was just this crazy person,
Mm. Yeah.
who was like
The
making
sense
something
to prove
up.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very much a battle of the ego that I was struggling with. Um, and, the facilitating an environment for someone who's grieving is very difficult because you're taking in this information from someone who passed away, and then you also need to create conversation with someone around it and relay that information and the things that they're telling you in a way that's going to make someone feel safe and loved and confirm that, you know, that person is still with them and
Yeah.
they haven't gone anywhere,
Exactly.
and it was a lot to juggle and balance.
So, where are you at? Let our listeners know like where you're at now with your mediumship. Like I know you just had a baby, but you can explain to them like where you took a pause.
Yes, I had a baby 8 months ago. When I got pregnant was like right around the time that I was pregnant with her, not long after I started doing the these healing sessions, these mediumship sessions. And when I got pregnant with my daughter, my intuition was nowhere to be found. And like I
Hmm.
talked to you about this a lot. I was shocked by it. I thought that, oh, when I'm pregnant, I'm going to feel so connected. My intuition's going to be so much stronger. And it was the complete opposite, which was kind of scary for me because I was starting to do this for work. And
Hmm.
I was like, there's no way that I can keep doing this
Yeah.
anymore. I am not connecting with anyone who I like from our family who I feel drop in pretty frequently. And
Hmm.
it was very difficult to, but knowing this girl now, very sensitive. And I've done a lot more thinking about it recently. And because it wasn't until after she was born that I started to feel my intuition pop in here and there.
Yeah.
And now, she's 8 months old is when I'm feeling the most connected to it. Maybe more so than before I was pregnant with her. But she's a very sensitive girl, very sensitive. And so thinking about it now, I think if I had put my energy outward towards connecting to other people, to spirit, to whatever, and opening
Hmm.
myself up that way, that wouldn't have been good for her energy. Your baby is within your space
Of
as
course.
they're
Yeah.
growing. So I think that a lot of my attention and energy needed to only be focused on me
Yeah.
and her while I was
And it
pregnant.
probably was even a innate protection thing, of already being pregnant, you're already a mom. So it's like this just protection that you probably had for her while she's growing and while she's so susceptible and young and sensitive and things like that. So I think that's exactly what needed to happen. I wanted to go back to your Reiki attunement because when I had my Reiki attunements, um, this was maybe 7 years ago or more, that I was, I also didn't do my attunements. Like you're supposed to space them out, what, 6 months or 3 months or something? I had them in a short amount of time. I had them like within a 3 month period. So maybe it was too much too soon, kind of thing that I didn't listen to the rules of, okay, you're supposed to do this and span it out. But when I got my attunements, I think the biggest thing for me is I didn't know that I needed to ground myself. I wasn't aware of that.
So huge.
And I physically, it was the scariest thing, I have to say, because I was so out of control of what was happening that my soul felt physically out of my body. It was like floating in front of me, it was above me, it was like not connected to my body. I was all over the place. And I remember being very numb at that time of any kind of emotion. I wasn't like excited, I wasn't sad, I was just like, and not saying I was going around being like a zombie kind of, but I was just like, it just is what it is. I was very matter of fact, very blasé kind of thing. And I after talking to a few people, maybe some of my massage therapist friends who also do Reiki or uh got some insight, eventually I said I want to shut this down. I was so like upset and frazzled and I wasn't myself. It just felt really off that finally, I think when I came into my mediumship and when I said that I feel like I got hit by psychic lightning, is when I spoke to your mom, that we had the conversation of you coming into your mediumship and that you were taking these mediumship classes and all these things. And that's when I kind of tuned in to your energy and like thought of where you are, thought of what you were doing, what you looked like what the classes looked like, all these things. And I think by me tapping into that, it opened back up my energy, but in a more controlled space. It was definitely more like, okay, I'm in control this time, right? Because it can be scary. Like it can kind of take you over if you're not ready for that.
Yeah, especially if you're not grounded, you need something, you need to be anchored.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're right, you will feel very out of body and very disconnected and out of control almost.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have that with your attunement, or probably because your attunement was set and proper spanned out?
We
And
don't
I was
follow
like,
rules here. I didn't feel that way in a way that made me feel unsafe. I felt that way feeling more connected to source.
okay,
Um, I, at that point, was pretty consistent with grounding myself every day, clearing my space, my energy, and setting up some protection for myself. And so I went into all of those attunements grounded and protected because I was teaching yoga too. And that
okay,
was when I started teaching, I was learned very quickly that I needed to protect my space and my energy.
yeah,
And it made a big difference in the quality of the class that I was teaching because I wasn't taking on energy from 10, 15 different people. I'm working more towards um, birth doula, offering some virtual prenatal services, kind of trying to plan out as I get back into work a spectrum of services through that are um, hopefully more affordable for people. So that's and Reiki.
so, um, like what do you do? I can talk about what I do, for like preparing for like my mediumship readings, but what do you do before mediumship reading? How do you get prepared?
I was thinking about this before we got on. I'm like, it feels like a lifetime ago that like the last 8 months are like an kind of a blur.
Hmm.
Um, I think first thing is about me, like getting up, making sure that I'm taking care of myself. Because if I'm not taken care of, I'm not going to be able to give the person who's paid for a reading with me a like the best quality reading that they can get. I won't be able to connect in the way that I know I can.
Yeah.
And so, for one, it's, making sure that I'm nourishing myself well through what I'm eating, drinking in the morning, making sure I'm grounded. My energy is cleared from people I've been with during the day, from the day before, from my dreams during the night, from any fears that I may have, right? You're kind of giving yourself a clean slate. Um, and then coming in and doing like a golden light cleansing of myself and then creating that protection bubble. And then if there's anyone that I want to keep in here for protection, like any of my loved ones, any of my guides, I will usually invite in to stick and to help me out during the reading. And then when I sit down with someone, I'm trying to remember. I remember asking them to say their name
Oh yeah,
for some
didn't you do that three
reason.
times? Didn't you have them do it three times?
I think so.
Hmm. Like
For
as
some
almost like an
reason,
invitation
someone
to be to accepting the energy or whatever it was.
hearing someone's name like that really, and at this was the time that I didn't know that I was doing mediumship readings. I thought I was just doing like some energy work on someone. And so for me, hearing someone's name like that helped me tune into their energy. It was very helpful.
Oh, good.
And so I would then set the intention that anyone who's here for the highest and greatest good of whoever I'm sitting down with is welcome to come through. And then, I mean, I worked with roses a lot.
Hmm.
They're very powerful
That
flower, I'd say.
that you would physically have roses, or you would just. put roses kind of in your aura, like have it,
In
is
my
that
aura.
okay?
They're very great for absorbing energy and for helping to clear things. And so I use it a lot to clear my own energy or to clear, the space between me and the client or to help protect and set the intention of just making sure that the right people were coming through and that it
Yeah.
was a safe space for both myself and the client.
Yeah. Um, Oh, that's the other thing too. So I was gonna ask, like, what lifts your vibration the most? Like, when do you feel most connected to spirit? Because for me personally, I've shared this in, I'm gonna have to look back. It's like episode 5 or something where I do back to basics. My listeners will know of my how to lift your vibration. I have an episode talking about that. And it's me pretty much jamming out my car. It might be the fact that I'm a millennial and I just jam out my car. But that is like when my vibration is just like zing. Like I can't control it.
Yeah, I think it's changing a
Mhm.
lot. It kind of depends on what I'm feeling. Sometimes I need that, like a song and a dance to kind of lift the energy up and the movement helps to clear anything that's stagnant. And sometimes it's sitting outside, putting my feet on the earth,
Hmm.
sticking my face into the sun, and that's just resetting and the thing that lifts me up the most. It really kind of on what I'm going into it feeling like I need.
Yeah. I love that. Perfect. Well, good. I think our listeners definitely got a lot of insight from our different perspectives of, how we do things and how we work. And it's all beautiful. It's all very connected. And, I feel like we are divinely guided in where we need to go and what we need to do. So we're gonna wrap up here, and I'm gonna thank you so much for sitting with me today and coming and
Thank you.
joining me on my podcast. I'm like so excited. I want to hear all the good things and about your doula experience and going forward and what that's like and having to juggle that with being so sensitive and intuitive. That's definitely going to be something that you're going to, figure out as you move into this new session of your life, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it'll be an asset.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to thank you so much for sitting with me